Hello and welcome to College Chit Chat, a podcast that casually discusses community colleges as an integral part of higher education. The purpose of the show is to expand the perspective of higher ed enthusiasts, specifically those in or soon to be job hunting. We are your hosts, Sonina Hernandez-Mickelson and
Daniel Mickelson.
Welcome back to our second episode. Last episode, we did mention about the 2021 Aspen Prize Virtual Awards ceremony. So, that has officially been awarded.
Drum roll, please.
To San Antonio College.
Yay!
So, I just have a little bit of a snippet that they wrote, so I'll read that quickly. The San Antonio College, one of 5 colleges in the Alamo Colleges district, is full of older or first-generation college students who are supported from start to finish to accomplish what they came to do, and then some. SAC actively recruits specifically within its immediate environment, an area that is predominantly low-income and Hispanic, with low rates of educational attainment and high rates of unemployment. 4/5 of students attend part-time. San Antonio, Texas student population is 34,787. Pell Grant recipients are 29%. Student of color, 67%. Other colleges might see these student characteristics as hindrances to strong completion outcomes, but in 2018, 48% of students who started at SAC graduated or transferred within 3 years.
Dang.
Yeah, compared to the national average, which is 46%. So, that's an incredible rate there.
Yeah.
The rate for students of color was nearly as strong at 45%, compared to the national average of 37%. At SAC, there is a feeling of family, a tangible sense, and concrete expectation that everyone in the community is responsible for students' well-being inside and outside the classroom. So I thought that was kind of fun little tidbit about the college. If you want to read more about the San Antonio College, along with the other institutions who are awarded the finalists with distinctions or Rising Star, you can read all of their descriptions and what they've been working on in the 2021 Aspen Prize publication on their website, which can be found at
highered.aspeninstitute.org/aspen-prize.
Yeah. So it's a fun little kind of PDF document that they combined and put together about all of the recipients and all of the projects that they're working on, about their communities and things like that. So it was kind of fun. Definitely recommend looking deep into what San Antonio College is working on. What I read was literally just the intro about the college, nothing about diving deep into their projects and initiatives. So definitely recommend looking at that.
Well, I didn't get a chance to watch the Aspen Prize ceremony, but I know you did, and I remember you telling me something about the reaction of the president. Can you talk a little about that, just to share what happened?
Yeah, so, really sweet ceremony. It was free. It was virtual. They brought in pretty high, important people. The First Lady, Dr. Biden, was there and gave a little speech. And then I am escaping his name, but the Secretary of Education was there, and he was the main key speaker. So that was pretty cool to listen to as well. And then they kind of just went and discussed all the different potential schools that could be winning the prizes and kind of what they were doing. And then they narrowed in and kind of did their rank up. So they did Rising Star, and then the institutions with distinction, award of distinction. And then when they informed SAC, they actually had some stuff pre-recorded, but then the actual awarding was live. So they called in the president, and they told them your institution is the recipient of this award, and it was very sweet. He just sat back in his chair, hands to his face and mouth, just could not believe that they got it. He was just so sincere and grateful for the award. And something that really impacted me was that he mentioned we would not be here today if it wasn't for our community and everyone believing in us. And he mentioned that just a few years ago, they were a completely different institution, and they've had to revamp and include literally everybody. And it was a teamwork and a team process in order to get the institution at this level. And so I thought it was very kind of him to acknowledge the community and to acknowledge all the hard work of his faculty and staff and students, and I believe the words that he used was just that they believed in what this could become. So I don't know, it was just a very, very sweet and sincere reaction, I believe, from the president.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, that is our update portion that we wanted to bring to you, the news happening in the community college world. But now we're going to dive into the meat of our episode. A lot has changed since we recorded our last episode, and it has informed what this episode is going to be about for sure. So Nina, would you like to share the news?
Yeah, so I recently accepted a job at a state college down in Florida. So yeah, it's been quite the process. A little bit of a shock.
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll dive into the details of all of that. But we thought it would be a good idea to discuss my experience with the job search. And then we will also continue the next few episodes about different experiences related with moving and transitioning to a new institution, and specifically transitioning from a 4-year institution to a college environment. So yeah, hopefully it's informative to a lot of people, and I will say that there's going to be very real and raw feelings throughout. So yeah, that's the big news. I guess I can specifically say I accepted a job as an academic advisor, so I will stay within academic advising, but it will be specifically with Lake Sumter State College in Clearmont, Florida. It's their South Lake campus.
Yeah. So lots of changes over here, because just to remind you all, Sonia and I have both only ever worked or attended 4-year institutions, and fairly large ones at that. I think our alma mater, Purdue, had like 20,000 plus students. How many students does Ball State have?
I want to say Ball State's probably 20 plus. So yeah. I mean, Utah State, you're looking at like a medium-sized institution, 20,000 plus students, and that's not including all their regional campuses.
Right.
Purdue, however, large institution, like
huge.
40. I think we were 42,000 plus,
and only growing.
And yeah, their record-breaking again first-year class that's coming in this summer is over 10,000 students. So
yeah, and then Lake Sumter, I know the South Lake campus specifically has how many students?
Yeah, so I guess you could say downsizing quite a bit. But their campus overall serves about 2,500 students.
And that's with all the campuses, or just South Lake?
That is just South Lake campus. My understanding is that is one of the larger campuses that they serve such a large population. And then they also, like, looking on their website and on top of like them informing me that about 500 or so of those students are actually University of Central Florida students that have classes that are served and done at that campus. Yes, so it's kind of a combination as well that they work with these students at the university level.
Yeah, and we'll definitely dive into the nitty gritty as we move on, because one of the things that we've discovered in this process is that community colleges are very much different from 4-year institutions. There's a lot of partnerships. There's a lot of interaction with the community, kind of like we talked about with San Antonio. And we'll dive into that in future episodes. But for this one, I'm just going to be asking Sonia a few questions, kind of digging into her experience with mostly we're going to stick with the job search process this time. And in other episodes, we'll talk about like first impressions, transitioning into the position, things like that. So just to start out, I wanted to ask you, why the switch? Why a community college now instead of your 4-year institution life you've been living?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess this is kind of a two-part. There's like a personal part and a professional part. So quickly with the personal part, obviously no surprise to anybody, we've been living in a global pandemic this past year, to which as an advisor, it was very difficult hearing from literally everyone, like colleagues, friends, the students that I helped advise. There was just a lot of death and sadness and loneliness, and there was just, I don't know, there was a big heaviness, I would say, to our society in general. And obviously we were working remote, so we were going down to Florida actually about once a month almost since August, because of family. So we have family down there. And just being able to experience being close to family. And again, in my own personal life, we lost some of my father's family members, and that impacted us quite a bit. That we just learned that there is no better time than now. You know, we're never going to be at that perfect spot of having enough money, or it's the right time, or all of that stuff. So it felt all of a sudden like, you know, if we're going to make this change, let's make this change, because we know we eventually want to be down there. So let's start taking a look. So that's kind of the personal side. The professional side, oh man. So I am a part of a doctoral program, and my cognate is in community college leadership, and I am attending the Ball State University doctoral in education of higher education program, to be
word
specific.
salad. Yay!
I know. Lots of words there. And as my cognate, because I always saw myself just staying in higher education, I was like, yeah, let me diversify my skill set and knowledge base and do a cognate in community college leadership.
I'm going to pause real quick.
Yeah.
Just for the people who aren't aware of doctoral programs, what is a cognate?
I would correlate kind of to like a emphasis, a minor concept of like it's an area that you're focusing on and specializing in, that works in alignment of your other program requirements and things.
Perfect.
So so throwing that out there, yes. So last semester I took a class from the wonderful Dr. Latz. It challenged us to look at community college systems in a different state. And specifically, the professor asked us to pick a state that we could eventually see ourselves working in. And we knew eventually that we wanted to move to Florida. So I was like, hey, I'm going to do Florida because that's where we want to end up. All right. So I decided to do my whole state project on Florida. And this is my geeky side coming out, but fell in love with
She really did.
Yeah.
She really did.
With the Florida college system, and getting to know about their 28 institutions and their transfer policies, and that's how I got to know about the Aspen Prize and all this other stuff. I did not know that they had such an in-depth and very detailed college system, and that they are nationally ranked. A lot of their institutions are nationally ranked. Several of them have received the Aspen Prize in the past. And they're kind of on the forefront of community colleges. So they are game changers within that realm of higher education. So I guess I kind of lucked out in that sense. So, kind of like a dream, right? Like, these institutions are so cool. Like, why not would consider working at a college? And then what really hit home was actually 2 articles that we read for a reading assignment. One was titled, and these were part of the Community College Journal of Research and Practice. One was titled, Making Community College Student Affairs Visible in Master's Level Student Affairs Preparation, a Longitudinal Curricular Audit. Sorry, again, lots of words. That was
Try
by
Googling that one.
Dr. Royer et al. And that one basically discusses about how within student affair master programs, we're not really seeing or introducing community college courses or incorporating them in the classes. They're not part of the core curriculum. Sometimes they're electives, or sometimes they don't even have anything specifically related to community colleges. So that one kind of dives deeper about, like, is that a disservice to our field? So definitely read out if you're interested in learning more about that. And then the other one that kind of like really, really hit home was titled Student Affair Professionals in the Community College, Critically Examining Preparation Programs from a Social Justice Lens. And that is, again, by Dr. Latz et al. And it opened up my eyes about viewing the work done at community colleges in that social justice lens. And also with some of the project that I had to do. I had to interview individuals working at a college down in Florida, and I saw that theme, that reoccurring theme of social justice, and that is something that I am passionate about, and it was never presented to me in that way. And I think genuinely I was just tired of kind of pushing against the grain at four-year institutions, that it seemed very appealing to go to potentially a college where it seems a little bit more incorporated. So that is a very lengthy response to my professional side of it, but those were kind of the key components of what was leading me to look at community colleges.
Well, and I remember when we first started talking about the transition, you mentioned like specifically looking at four-year institutions. I know USF was like up there, and initially before this class, it was just four-year institutions that we're looking at. It was like I guess talk a little bit about that shift, or like anything like you had like mentally overcome to like make the jump from like just applying to four-year institutions to then expanding your search parameters.
Yeah, so because we're trying to be close to family, we wanted to be within a certain proximity to them. And honestly, the only institution that was available was USF. And again, because I wasn't even considering community colleges or state colleges at that time. And I guess the other option was the University of Central Florida, UCF. However, we did not like the idea of being very in the city of Orlando, so that one didn't seem as appealing. And again, like it wasn't on my radar. And then with these classes, I was like, it seems very silly of me to not include these 2-year, well, I don't want to say 2-year because some of them do grant 4-year degrees, but these colleges, and once I did, it opened up several institutions.
Really
did.
Went from a list of 2 to like 10.
Yeah, but really though, and I mean, when you look at it realistically, there's over 1,000 community colleges, and on top of that, like that's just the colleges. If you're looking at campuses on top of that, there's more. And so just to kind of show you all that it will drastically improve your chances of finding a position if you're willing to open up that component of your search. And again, it's not that I don't think I had to like work over any like biases or anything like that. It was just more like it wasn't on my radar. I didn't really think about it, and this class really did open that up for me. And once I changed that job agent, I was getting emails constantly from higher ed jobs.
Just wasn't part of your worldview.
Yeah, so. It just wasn't. So.
Yeah, awesome. So kind of along those same lines, like thinking back to like those initial beginnings of the job search, what did you have any concerns like with starting a job search? Like, what were you thinking about considering when like thinking about changing positions?
Yeah, concerns. 2 major ones. One is it's been 4 years, a little over 4 years, that I've had to even do a job search. And again, it wasn't that I had to, it was more because we wanted to. I wanted to move down there. And I think the second big concern that I had was the pandemic caused a lot of people to lose their jobs or get furloughed. And so the market right now is you're competing against a lot of people for these positions compared to before. It was like, yeah, you would be competing. I mean, it's not saying that it was easy, but it was just a lot of people are searching for jobs, and so I wasn't sure exactly how that was going to come into play. And then there was the concern also, like, okay, if I get a job, like I'm at the bottom rung of the ladder, so if something happens, am I the one to get cut? Versus, here, like I have a little bit more seniority and things like that, which, with an institution like Purdue and stuff, they personally weren't financially struggling. So I knew I was locked in. So those were kind of some risks that I had to, to think about or incorporate.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, like I remember those conversations. It was like, there's just so many people, and I don't know if you want to talk about like the number of people who applied for the job you applied for, not to toot your own horn or anything, but I don't know if you want to mention the specific number, but there was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll kind of dive into this deeper, but yeah, well, I mean, we'll just talk about that later when we talk about
Sounds
the
good.
process.
Sounds good. No problem. Okay. So then just to kind of give everybody kind of an idea of your process then in the job search, what were you doing to prep for / actually engage in this job search? Because I know you've had quite a bit of experience and quite a bit of success with this process, and so I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these are the obvious things, but if not, hopefully you are considering this. But like, I had to revamp my resume. Like, I had kind of updated it of when I got my job at Purdue, but I didn't really have the specifics of what I've expanded on within those 4 years, right? Obviously, I had to update my cover letters, adapt that to the different institutions or job roles that I was applying for. And this is the hard part with both of those. I feel like it just depends on the person about how your resume looks. Like, I feel like our industry, our field generally has a pretty basic look, but I know some people like the new kind of design and layouts and stuff. I will admit my resume is very basic. It's not creative whatsoever. It just works for me. I feel like it's just clear. So definitely having to work through that. The cover letters, again, this I feel like is very up to each individual. I kind of have a little bit of a standard one, like a general structure. Obviously, I look at the job descriptions and adapt my wording and things like that depending on what they're looking for. But for the most part, I have kind of a basic layout that I follow. The other thing that I had to kind of make sure to have and revamp was my reference list. So, having those conversations with my supervisor and our head advisor, seeing if they would be willing to be references. Thankfully, I have a wonderful relationship with both of them, so they were more than happy to do so, even though they're like, well, we'd like to keep you around. And so they were a part of those conversations very early on in our search and process for that. And then also reaching out to some older colleagues that I've worked with and seeing if they were okay, and obviously that also means maintaining those relationships over those years. So definitely keep up with your network. I had to update my LinkedIn. I will admit I do not use LinkedIn very frequently. So I did have to update that, make sure it was clean and tidy in case they did search, which is another thing, like Google search yourself. See what pops up, see, if you want certain things to be private, make sure they're fully private and not something that they can find. I also kind of have the luxury that my name in Google it registers it as misspelled, so it always pulls up Sonia's instead of Sonia's. So usually if my name pops up, it's like, okay, that those are the things that are associated with. Usually it's affiliated with the institutions I'm working with or stuff like that. So but yeah, it doesn't hurt to Google yourself. We kind of mentioned too, like, what institutions was I aiming for? So my big priority was location. I wanted to be close to family. I didn't want it to be a 6-8 hour drive from family. I wanted it to be, fairly close and stuff. So seeing like, what are my options and what am I looking for? Building the job agents in higheredjobs.com. There's a couple other ones out there. I personally like higheredjobs.com, so I just stuck really with that one, or word of mouth or things like that. Mm-hmm. Looking at our alumni network, we have a Facebook page that constantly there's things being posted there. We also have a directory of alumni, seeing like who works where, can we reach out to them, that kind of stuff. So kind of just seeing what my options are, or who my connections are, and kind of prepping all of that to begin applying and job searching, I guess. So quite a bit of work up front, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's definitely not an easy process. And like, I feel like you and I both have had weird job searches, I feel like. And I don't know if there is such thing as a normal job search, but all of our job searches have always been very geographically bounded. Yeah. It's never been a situation of like, oh, well, yeah, just send cover letters and resumes all across the nation and see what bites you get. Yeah. We've constantly been, either a single institution that we've had to apply for, or in this case, I mean this one was actually nice because there were several institutions to choose from.
Well, and this is the first move that it was because I wanted to. That's the location I wanted to. My first job was because you had to finish your undergrad, so there was a very specific location, small college town, the only institution within an hour and a half, 2 hour drive. So there wasn't much option there. And then when we moved here to Indiana for Purdue, again, that was because you were moving for your program. Again, college town, but we had two institutions. We had Ivy Tech and
we
and
increased
Purdue.
the numbers.
Yep. But again, not much say about like where it could go. This was the first one where it was like intentionally like we want to be somewhere and we are looking to move there, so we had a little bit more say. Plus, on top of that, I would say the other ones, they were timed. Like we had to be there by a certain date or specific time, so it was kind of like I got a job, let's do it. Versus this one, it was more like we were comfortable in our positions. We didn't have to move positions. We weren't in a place that we were required to look. So I had the flexibility of waiting, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it was very different this time around. Yeah. And it was nice.
Yeah, it was.
In that sense. Okay. So then now we've talked about like the prep for the job search. Let's talk about this like actual interview process that you went through for Lake Sumter.
Yeah.
Because I know it was quite a bit different from other processes that you've gone through. I don't kind of want to talk through those similarities, differences.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm getting over a sickness. But, the thing for me, this timeline was extremely fast.
Yeah.
I initially going into the job search phase, I was like, okay, I'll start applying for some jobs. I'll probably get some hits and do some interviews in June, maybe end of July. August soonest is probably when I could be somewhere else, so I thought I had a few months. And obviously that was like in March, April, kind of when I was thinking that. So for Lake Sumter, I applied end of April, like April 23rd-ish, 25th-ish. I was like applying institutions and stuff. Within like 2 weeks, I got a response back saying, hey, we want to interview you. And it was with, that following week. So early May, I interviewed with them and they mentioned, we have some people that we're interviewing till the end of the week. You'll probably hear back by the end of next week. And so I was like, okay, yeah, like no problem. So again, kind of thinking like, end of May, something. But no, they were very quick. Like they interviewed me, I think it was, it was a Tuesday. Yeah, they interviewed me on Tuesday. My references contacted me on Wednesday and Thursday saying, hey, we were contacted. And I was like, whoa, they were interviewing people till the end of the week. Okay. And then I was kind of hopeful to hear back from that same week on Friday. Didn't hear anything, but that following week on, I think it was either Monday or Tuesday, they got back to me and they were like, hey, like, we're interested in you. So, it was literally like less than a month. Like,
from start to finish, like less than a month.
Yeah. So start to finish with like application being submitted to an offer in my email was within 4 weeks. Yeah. So, very quick process. And they also mentioned like they wanted me to start in June, which I was like, whoa, like I thought I was going to have till July, August, like I said. I also didn't want to like leave my team hanging because it's orientation season. It's really busy for us, and so it was very, very quick timeline wise. I guess I don't know.
Talk to me about the types of interviews you had.
Yeah, so this is I don't know if this is a COVID thing. I don't know if this is just their process. But the first round of interview was actually a one-way interview. This is the first time in my 6 years of being a student affairs professional that I have done something like this.
What is a one-way interview?
Yeah, so it is where I go into a system. So I got an email saying, hey, like, we want to interview you. Once I confirmed that, they sent me another email saying, this is the system that you're going to be using. Here is your link. It'll take you about X amount of time. When you are ready, click this link, but be prepared to start when you click this. So I was like, okay, all right. So they gave me a certain deadline to have that submitted by. I think I had like 3 days or whatever, but it ended on a weekend, so I didn't want to take it, I didn't want to start it on that Sunday, because what if I had tech issues and there was no one to call or contact and I can't turn it in? So
this is a very important life lesson.
Yeah.
Make sure you do things in time where you can actually contact the IT department.
Yes. So I didn't want to be like left hanging, and also like, Fridays, you never know who's in, who's not, especially this summer and stuff. So I was like, I need to do this quick. So I think I only prepped for like a day before I did my interview. And so then I logged into the system, and then it really did just start. It's like, there's question 1, and in my case, it was someone had read the question out loud. Again, don't know who this person was. Now I do, but at the time, like, there was no introduction. I'm just seeing this video of this person. I don't know if this is an HR rep. I don't know if it's an advisor. I don't know if it's, the president or whoever. Right, yeah. And they're just like, here's your question. I think I had like 6 questions on there. And each question, they were, it was like pre-recorded them reading it. And I had about 3 attempts on each one.
Yeah.
So I could... And the thing was, they read it, and then there's the clock that starts counting down, like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it's go time, and you have only, I think I had 2 or 3 minutes per question.
I'm not gonna lie, this sounds so stressful to me.
It was! Like, I get anxiety with that. Like, I'm not a good test taker, and I felt like this was, like, one of those tests. And so then I would start, there's no time to process, because it's less than a minute that it's giving you to think, and so then you're just talking and stuff. But again, thankfully, I had the option to redo videos if I wanted to, so I could pause and write down notes, or I liked what I said here, or anything like that. So I think in some aspects it was nice, but in other ways it was kind of stressful. So again, I've never done anything like that before. I also, knowing that I had to do this, that one day prep time I was talking about, like, I was messaging friends and colleagues that I knew, like, have you ever done this? Like, what it's like? What kind of questions do they ask? That kind of stuff, to kind of get an idea of what it was. Because, like I said, I'd never done anything like that. Did
you find several people who had done something similar?
I had used my sorority network, and it was people in different fields. But they mentioned, this is common in my field, or I've done this, or whatever, and I could kind of get an idea of it. I don't think I found specifically anyone in higher ed.
Yeah, it doesn't, like, I've never seen this done in higher ed personally.
Yeah. So it was an interesting experience. I think I missed, like, the cues of talking to people, like, seeing, like, am I, you're just, like, looking at yourself, and I actually, kind of funny, I had 2 sticky notes right next to my camera on my computer that I drew eyes on them to be like, look at the eyes and not, like, me on the screen, which was a tip someone had given me.
I love it.
So the one-way interview was kind of weird for me, but like I said, I don't know if that's their procedure. I don't know if it's COVID procedure. I don't know what it was. So.
Okay, so we had the first one-way interview. Then where did you go from there?
And so from there, I think it took a couple of days, and then they called back saying, hey, we want to do a second interview with you. The HR rep who contacted me gave me an outline, like, if you accept, this is the amount of time you're expecting. You're going to have, you're going to be with the committee. They're going to ask you some questions. You have this time to ask questions yourself. You're going to have a presentation, a 10 to 15 minute presentation. They asked me, which pretty standard.
Yeah.
And they gave me the topic on that. But the one thing that was kind of surprising, again, that I had never had to experience per se in any other interview process that I'd done, is that they informed me that I would be provided a writing prompt on the spot of the interview, of which they would give me the prompt that at that moment in the interview. So I didn't have the prompt ahead of time, and they said it would be about 5 to 10 minutes of writing that I would do in the interview process.
Man, that is what it's like taking the ACT writing portion of the test. Like,
right, yeah. Well, and I remember asking the HR rep, I was like, is it just a writing prompt that I turn in and that's it? Or are we going to discuss what I write about? Like, what, and I mean, here I am a doctoral student. Like, if there's anything they tell us to write, we write. Like,
yeah.
I could go on, but I just didn't know exactly kind of what it was about. And they're like, oh, like, it'll be up to the committee, it's fine, they'll give you the prompt or whatever. It didn't seem like they really knew, like the HR person didn't really know too many details, so it seemed like it was more of a, I guess, committee thing, I don't know. But yeah, that was different as well.
Also, maybe new COVID procedures, they can't see in person, well, quote unquote in person, you're not there on campus, so maybe it's something they've added to get some other aspect of who you are.
Yeah.
Did they... Well, I feel like I remember you mentioning something about, and maybe I'm just making memories up now, but I feel like you mentioned something about them, like, saying that they were doing it because they had so much written communication because of COVID. Was that right?
Yeah, so that was actually in the in-person.
Okay.
I'm doing quotes, but you can't see it. In-person interview. So the in-person interview was a Skype call. Or Skype. Zoom call. Oh,
how old are you?
How old am I? It was a Zoom call. And it wasn't, of all, again, processes that I've been into, it was not a lot of people. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 6 people max, throughout the 2-hour, I think, interview that I had. I think it was only supposed to be like an hour and a half, and then just like talk a lot or something. So it's kind of 2 hours. But yeah, so then the in-person interview, they asked me some questions and I got to respond after that. I was able to ask them some questions briefly, and then they're like, all right, you're going to do your presentation. And I was like, cool, which usually the presentation, at least from previous experiences and being on some job searches, those are usually open to like other faculty, staff, students, whoever. So I was expecting other people to like jump in. It was the same 6 people. They're like, we're ready when you are. You're good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just whatever. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, this is it. So then, yeah, did my presentation. And then after that, they're like, cool. Like, some people are going to hop off now because they, need to go do some responsibilities or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, nice seeing you. And then that's when they did the writing prompt. I will say the writing, and they did explain at that moment, they're like, hey, the writing prompt has been added to the interview process because COVID has required us to go remote, and there's been a lot of demand and need to have written communication throughout this year. And so they felt like it was necessary to just see how my written communication was like. And then they gave me the prompt, and were like, you're good to go, right? And stuff like that. I want to say that the awkward part was, like, they kept their screens on. And
That's so weird.
Like, I didn't want to turn my screen off, but then it's also, like, they just staring at me, like, while I'm typing here. So that was a little bit of a pressure. The actual prompt, I didn't, like, once I got it, it wasn't terrible. I felt like I touched actually on some of the points during my presentation or some of the questions that they asked previously. So it didn't seem like they were trying to, like, be tricky and get you or anything like that. But
I just wanted to see how you wrote.
Yeah. But it was also kind of weird because Zoom doesn't allow you to, like, upload documents. So they're like, you can type into the Zoom chat box, but Zoom chat actually has, like, a character limit. So...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so when I decided to just do it in a Word document, I was like, all right, because they said you can do it either straight in the box or do a Word document, but you can't put the Word document there. So I just decided to do a Word document and started writing, right? And then when I went to copy and paste it in, I saw that it was cutting off my responses. So I had to then tell the committee, like, hey, like, this is going to be several messages in, I'm sorry. And so then I had to, like, see where it was cutting it off, paste or whatever. There was a couple times where, like, it I accidentally, like, copied one of the words twice or whatever. And I was like, oh, like, I accidentally copied it twice. Like, I'm sorry, so it was a little bit kind of confusing. So yeah, that was interesting.
Technology.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. Okay. I feel like that gives us a good grasp of the interview process.
One thing, just to point out, because you brought this up earlier, I did also, after the full committee, I got to speak with the dean of students, who would be the supervisor if given the job. And they then mentioned, like, thank you for coming. Do you have any further questions? Here's some things you should know. And that's when they mentioned, like, we had 77 people apply for this job, this one advising position. To which for the one-way interview, they invited 12. So that's a massive cutback, right? They invited 12, and then from those 12, they did 4. So
so many people applying for the
lots
job.
and lots of people. So when they gave me that number, I mean, not gonna lie, it was definitely a confidence boost to hear those numbers and be like, dang, like, from 77 people, I'm one of 4,
Right.
So that in itself, I was like, all right, like, I'm doing something right. So.
I am at least here.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, just, you mentioned this, and we'll dive more into this in later episodes as we talk more about, like, Lake Sumter's organizational chart and things like that. Mm-hmm. But her direct supervisor is the dean, which is wild to me. Yeah. Normally, academic advisors are not directly supervised by a dean. Yeah. That is very uncommon.
Wait, talking about prepping for all of this stuff, though, I had already known that.
Yeah.
Again, this is my nerdy side due to grad school. This is for my master's program, but I am a sucker for organizational charts.
She really is. It's weird.
It's one of my favorite things to look up. So I had actually seen that, and I was like, oh, like, that's interesting that the advisors report directly to the dean of students, but all right, like, that's just how their institution is organized. So I had known that. So that's something also for prep work. Look up their organizational structures. Those are generally fairly easy to find. Also, obviously, look up the institutions you're interviewing for.
What?
Yeah, I mean, so actually, funny thing. So prepping for my presentation, I mean, most institutions, their marketing page or something, they have like a standardized PowerPoint structure or font or colors you're supposed to use.
This is Sony nerdness coming out again.
Yes, yeah. Again, my master's program prepared me well for this. So every time I do interviews, I specifically try to use the formats that are sent by the institutions on their pages, right? I was looking on their research and stuff, and they didn't have anything. I was like, what? They don't have any, like, set
She felt really lost. It was really funny.
And so I was like, all right, well, I got to do this right? I got to make it look professional. And I came across one of their flyers. It was a college night flyer that they had. And it looked like a fairly simple design. It was kind of like 2 rectangles with the top color was one of their school colors, bottom color was one of their school colors, and then they had their logo on it. So I was like, all right, I can rebuild that. And so I kind of followed that general design for my presentation and followed those colors, and they actually complimented me on that. They're like, so can you send this PowerPoint to me so we can have this background, this template for it? And they're like, where did you find it? And I was like, oh, I created it. And they're like, oh, well, it looks great and we need it. And they're like, how did you decide to design that? And I was like, I came across one of your college night, like, flyers, and that's what I stole it from. And so, yeah, they liked that idea, and yeah. It was
well, and I really think this is an important lesson, though, because it's the little things.
Yeah, the details.
Like, you could have just used a standard PowerPoint background template, but they saw this, and for you, it's just your nerdy side coming out, because you, like, have to have it. She really has to have it matching the official university colors and stuff like that. She'll, like, go into things and, like, use the sample tool, all the things. But but for them, it was like this above and beyond thing. It was something that made her stand out. And I feel like that's a huge thing in interview processes is
Right.
those little things that make you stand
Well,
out.
it was showing that I was trying to be intentional.
Yeah.
I was catering the presentation to them and their campus and institution. And again, I was lucky enough that my graduate degree had trained me to look for those things. Also, just in my experience with Purdue, like, they are very big about the look of Purdue.
Oh my gosh,
and
they are.
their website is phenomenal about what fonts you use, what PowerPoints are used, if you're making videos, what logos for when. So, I mean, they even have like a generator for your signature and everything. Like, Purdue is very strict on that stuff, so it's kind of been embedded into me at this point. So it was a little bit of a shock when I couldn't find that easily.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think we're gonna start heading towards wrap up here, but before we dive into that, I just did want to ask one final question. Is now that we're in the spot, like, what are you most excited / nervous about with this upcoming transition?
Oh, excited and nervous about which one should I do first? Like the nervous or the excited?
Let's do nervous, and then we'll end on the happy note of excited.
Yeah, nervous. Oh, let's see. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little bit nervous of moving from a 4-year institution to a state college. Like, that is a completely different environment. I am moving from a team of 40 advisors just for my college alone. Like, that's not across campus. That's my college that I work for. To a team of 3 advisors that serves the entire campus. So
bit of a change.
Yes, a bit of a change. And on top of that, I guess I'm not worried about the amount of degrees or whatever, because they really don't have that many degrees that they offer. I mean, I'm working with like 25 plans of study at Purdue, like different catalog years and different majors and concentrations and stuff. So I know I can do it, but I guess it's just more like understanding how does their system work. They're also very big with transfer, obviously, to 4-year institutions. They have a a direct connect to UCF, so I don't understand that process and what that's like. The other thing is my role is going to be working quite a bit with dual enrollment students, so we're talking high school students. Anywhere from probably, I'm assuming, sophomore and up is probably the grades that usually students are taking those classes, which is a population that I have never worked with. I have worked with students who have transferred, and helping them with, like, this is how our classes work here and that kind of stuff, but never on the other side of, these are courses that you're going to be taking to help you when you get to college. So, so yeah, kind of looking at that other side, and again, working with a younger population than I've generally worked with. But, yeah, kind of on the flip side of that, that also makes me excited. Like, it's something different. It's,
challenge.
Yeah, a new challenge, a switch. I'm excited to actually be working at a college. I'm, ever since starting my cognate, I didn't want to be one of those professionals where I write about all of this experience and what these institutions should be doing and what are the flaws in the system and all this stuff without actually being a part of it,
Yeah.
So I'm a Latina woman, and it would be like me talking about I don't know, like, issues in the Asian community and some of the problems that they may be experiencing or all this other stuff, and it's more like, yeah, you can talk about it, but what does it mean if it's not, like, I haven't lived those experiences, I haven't seen what it's like to be in those shoes. And so for me, it was also very important to be like, hey, like, if I'm going to be studying this and potentially writing about these things and quote unquote to help and support these institutions, then I felt a need to dive into it. So I felt excited about that, to finally be like, all right, like, I'm studying this, I'm diving into this world, and I want to see what it's about. So I am excited to do that. Again, it kind of makes me nervous because it's new territory. I feel like change and new things generally scare people, but yeah, it's exciting.
Awesome, awesome. Well then, just to then wrap all of this up, we will, like I said earlier, continue this conversation about Sonina's transition into this community college. We have several different topics coming up, so stay tuned. But just to finalize this one, what would you say to professionals in a job search now, or future professionals who are currently in a job search?
Oh, what would I say? There's so much to say, as you can tell.
We have said a lot already.
Yeah, we have said a lot. So what would I say? I would say do your homework. Like, be prepared. Find out what you want. Like, I know sometimes, especially when you're starting out, you're just like, I just need anything, right? Yeah. Like, I just need to get my foot in the door and just be a part of the field. But I think that even starting out and getting your foot in the door, like, be intentional about where you're going, what you want to do. And I mean, my initial job, I was in admissions, and I am nowhere near admissions now. But it was a valuable experience that I needed to find out, like, I didn't really want to stay in that realm. But I loved it. So, just kind of figure out kind of what direction you want to go in, be open to new experiences. And with that said, like, even finding out kind of what direction you want to go in, like, requires homework. You need to research, what does that role look like? Who can I talk to that maybe is in that position that can give me an idea, which was something I did for a couple positions that I was considering applying for and stuff. I reached out to some friends and been like, hey, you had a position like this. What was that like? Would you do it again? And that question specifically, like, would you do it again? Kind of helped me gauge about, like, why would they or why would they not? And does that fit with my personal wants and desires in a position and in my career? So, and then also just, if you do apply to a position, do your homework. Like, know what the institution is like, know what the community is like, know, like, the counties and the populations and where are they getting students from, and what, kind of the things that they describe in the job description. What departments are you going to be working with? Who are you under? Like, what is the org chart? That kind of stuff. So there is a lot of work to do up front, but I believe that if you do that up front, you're going to be way more confident when it comes to the interview process. And it's going to show. Like, they're going to be like, wow, you, like I said, you did your homework, you know about us, you care, and you're showing that you are intentional about being in this process.
It's an actual high stakes exam.
I wouldn't say
real world stakes, I should say. Obviously college exams are important as well, but this one is the exam where you could or could not get a job because of how you do.
Based on how you prep for it. Yeah. So, do your homework.
Yeah, and you did touch on something I wanted to say, and I think the reason I wanted to mention it is because it is very hard for me to do this, and I'm terrible at networking. But, like Sonina said, reach out to people that you know, that you have contact with, even if you aren't super close to them. If they're in your alumni network or whatever, reach out to people. People are willing to talk. And I feel like that conversation you had, because Sonina was looking at a athletic advising position, and neither of us have any experience with that, and so she reached out to a friend who was an athletic advisor, and they had a great chat about it, and they talked about the different ins and outs of how it's different from academic advising, and I feel like it was very valuable.
It was, and it introduced me to a whole different world of things. Like, they're like, oh, what kind of institution are they at? And right off the bat, they're like, oh, they're Division II, These are things that I'm like, this is all lingo that I was not aware of. And I was like, hey, if I'm considering maybe applying for this, what are things that you would recommend for me to read up on and know about? And they sent me some links of basic handbooks and things for the NCAA and all this other stuff. They asked me what sport, because that would determine things as well. And so, like, so, I mean, even then, it was just interesting to find out about some of that stuff.
Like, we're all in higher ed, but once again, like, the lingo for different areas, it's like a whole other world. And that's the beauty of higher ed. I feel like it's just everything is encapsulated within that world.
Well, and you said something along the lines of that, look into the positions and the things and network and stuff. And my response is going to be like, if you look into that, because people are looking into you. Like, student affairs is a big field, but it is also very small.
Yeah.
And I remember I was working at an institution once, and I wasn't even in this department area. I was, like I said, I was working in admissions, and I got contacted by someone who knew me from my grad school days, and they're like, hey, this person is applying from your institution. Do you know them? And have you worked with them? And are you aware of, like, anything about them?
That's wild.
And like I said, I was in admissions. The specific person that they were inquiring about was in the housing realm of stuff. And yeah, so like, it was just because they're like, hey, like, I know you're working there. Have you ever come across this person? So it wasn't even like I'm a reference or anything
That's
like
intense,
that. So
yeah.
that's why, like, they are doing their homework, so you do your homework.
Yeah.
Too.
Behave. Is what we're trying to say here.
I wouldn't say behave.
I know. Bring in a little levity.
Yeah, just realize that, you know, your networking and the people you come across, you know, every interaction counts.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just be cautious about that.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Well, I guess that kind of wraps
it up for this episode.
All right. Well, we want to thank all of you for joining us today. Don't forget that you can send us questions or recommendations. We did get a new email, so you will want to send those to communitycollege.chitchat@gmail.com, or you can find us at Twitter at cc_chitchat. So, I believe you have a quote.
Yeah, we look forward to chatting with you next time. And as my favorite teacher, as we all know, is Miss Frizzle, as she would say, where the road ends, adventure begins.
I am very impressed with you finding these things that relate to our discussion.
Miss Frizzle relates to life.
Yes, it's true. Well,
Okay,
that's
see
it,
everybody.
Everyone. We'll chat with you next time.
Bye.